Hi. I've wanted for some time just to really talk about a really vital part of my life, which is my faith, my spirituality. We've been doing Bottled Up for a long time, and we never wanted to put a barrier in front of people by nailing our colours to the mast that felt exclusive of that particular type of people and belief, because we wanted people of all faiths and people of none. We wanted everybody to get the help that was needed. But over recent months, with the world being in such a difficult place, and I'm recording this in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and somehow the fact that we've actually, in a crisis, me and John found that we weren't alone, that another, capital A, who in the end I call God the Father, but another was in that universe and was willing and happy to help us, was a crucial part of us going through the things that we went through and getting through it. And so we both made the decision really that this bit might be really enormously helpful to people. And certainly in the COVID-19, I think people are realizing that many of the things that we look to for safety that we took for granted, and I think in the Western world, if it moves, we nail it down, and if it doesn't, we insure it to the hilt. And all of these safety systems have begun to fall, and suddenly this question, is anybody there, has become a really important one. And certainly I grew, my father was a pastor, so I was taught that somebody was there from the very first thing I can remember. But the person that they presented, for example, on top of the 10 Commandments, seemed to have another completely different set of commandments in the evangelical Christianity that I grew up in. Thou shalt not smoke, thou shalt not drink, thou shalt not put on makeup, shalt not go to the cinema, thou shalt not under any circumstances whatsoever appear to be having a good time on a Sunday. And so it went on. And though my dad and my mum were lovely, they were absolutely lovely people, and a lot of the people in the church were lovely, my first if you like, exposure to Christianity was that it was a really repressive regime. And that basically God looked at everybody else having fun, and to our lot said, well, you can't do that. And everybody else seemed to be having fun doing that. So I began to rebel against it. And then from about the age I got a bit of freedom, I kind of appeared to comply at home. And then whenever I was going out, I was just doing the same thing as everybody else. And then when I was 16, I got a scholarship to a place called the Dartington College of Arts, which was a very progressive arts college, dance, drama, and music. And my mother just made sure there were lots of Christian contacts of people that I could go to dinner for. And actually, I never went to any of them. I just couldn't wait to get away. I just wanted to be rid of it all. And so I arrived at this college, I was only 16, looking around all these really cool people. It was kind of the end of the 60s, and they were, everybody was doing what felt to be really exciting, exploring drugs, exploring sexuality. And I mean, I just looked at it and I loved it. And so I threw myself into it with great abandon. And so as far as I was concerned, Christianity was something that was, but not is. And so then I left Dartington when I was 18, and I got a scholarship to the Royal College of Music in London. And my mother, again, she's very persistent, my mother. When I got to the Royal College, she contacted the Christians in the Christian Union and told them that I was a pastor's daughter and would they look out for me. Now, Royal College of Music was very different to Dartington College of Arts, in as much as that they were very studious. Music students tended to really apply themselves. They had to do a lot of practice of their instruments, and so it wasn't a place where you were cool like Dartington. But I was really into image and really into being cool. And so when I got to college, there were about a dozen of us that were into, going to Carnaby Street, all these kind of things that we did in those days, So it was really important to me how I came across, what I looked like, what I wore. And then into this mix came the most uncool part of the Royal College of Music, which were the Christians. Not only did they throw themselves into study and everything, but they would kind of come into the canteen singing uncool things like "Jesus is alive today" and in harmony, because they were music students, And so they decided they were going to take me under their wing. So they'd come and they'd buy me coffee and they'd buy me meals. They'd come and sit at my table, and they were really, really nice. And I loathed them. I absolutely loathed them. And they just kept coming back. That was the most frightening thing about them all, is they just kept coming back. They had things like, we're praying for you. And they talked to me about the Bible, which was really stupid because I knew the Bible backwards. And so I was lethal. I was scornful, I was unkind, and I gave them a really hard time. And so this went on for quite a long time, but I was taking more and more dope, and then I got to the point where I had a terrible trip on LSD. And I came out of that in an absolute mess, and my whole world began to fall apart. I was very, very paranoid. I kept tripping when I was no longer taking any acid, and so it was really, really awful, and I didn't know what to do. And at that point, I remembered the Christians. And the most amazing thing is, somehow in all of this scorn that I've been pouring on, and this care that they keep giving me back, I got this message that I mattered to them, that they cared for me. And so intriguingly, I reached out to them. One of someone who became a really good friend in the end, the moment I said, "It's Lou," I was called Linda Hales in those days, so Lou Hales I became, and I'm in a mess, could you help me? I mean, she just went in the car. She came straight across London to get me. And took me back to her home. Now, her mum was nursing someone with Parkinson's. I had scabies at the time. I was dressed in black like a blooming witch, and I had scabies. I was nobody's idea of somebody to take under their wing, but they gave me their home. They gave me a bedroom, and then my dad, who lived in Devon, which is miles away from London, just happened to be there. And so I rang him and I said, "Will you go and help me? I'm in a mess." And so he came along and we just talked. And he said, "Well, Lou, you know what I think the answer is? I think you need to know God." Now, at that point, it didn't matter. I tell you, when you're in a mess and when you're in a crisis, your options, you become much less fussy about your options. And I knew if I didn't get help, that I was going to completely have a breakdown or something. I felt appalling. So I said, "Okay, well, Dad, can you pray for me?" And it's really hard to explain to someone what it's like going in a prayer alone and then coming up from that prayer feeling that something has happened. But I knew something, now I say somebody, met me. I knew something had happened. And the craziest and the most amazing thing about it is all these uncool kind of music students who were having some sort of a Christian Union kind of away day, they came into the room and I felt I loved them. I started hugging them, and this scornful person, and because I understand now that they were my brothers and sisters, many of them, they became my friends. And so the coming into the faith, I couldn't have come in with more prejudice, I have to say, but I was impacted, and I knew, and it was like someone had put the light on, and suddenly I could see a spiritual realm. I just wandered around for about 3 months in shock, just thinking, oh, and I realized that the universe was full rather than empty, and it was full of a God who loved me. Now I'm going to stop here because I don't want these to be too long each time, but so just to apply this to maybe where you're at, if you have prejudice about Christianity, I don't blame you. And I have to say, looking around now, I'm not sure we always do a lot better. But one thing that I can tell you is there are people out there who do this faith with integrity and love and kindness, and you'll know who they are, because Christianity is about Jesus coming to live inside of you. And if they are authentic, you will sense that love lives in them. And that's what I suggest you look out for. because love comes to dwell inside of us, and it shows. You can feel it when it comes, but also you can see it when it's there. So I feel I can't even talk about my faith until I address many of the prejudices that we come to this with. And if you're there, I really, really get that. And I hope, like me, that you can get beyond some of that prejudice, because getting through that prejudice is really worth it. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.